Split pushers are one of the most annoying things to deal with in League of Legends. It can make the game feel like it comes down to a 1v1 that you're not even involved in. I played Clash with my friends last night where we had to deal with a master tier split pushing Jax who developed a massive early lead over our Trundle, so I'm going to walk you through what we did to get through that as a team. But before we begin, make sure that if you start enjoying this video that you like and subscribe in order to see more educational content like this in the future. To start, you basically need mid power to do this. If you don't have mid power and you also are in the losing end of a split push 1v1 situation, you're basically in no position to win the game whatsoever and you're praying for a miracle to happen in order to turn that game around. But basically what you want to do is you want to get mid power and you want to shove out each wave, and after each wave you dip into the fog of war towards the side where the split pusher is, and he can no longer continue pushing until he knows where you are. The Jax in this scenario happened to notice that we went missing towards the direction where he was, so he backed off and just started recalling, and that put an end to a split push for now. Some minutes later, we made a whoopsie and the enemy team now has Baron, which should be devastating with a split push in the enemy team. But thankfully we still have mid power because the enemies refuse to try and engage onto us because they are too afraid to take a fight onto us and are just trying to win through their split pusher. But without mid lane power, you can see here we just move towards bot lane, and we try and make a collapse on this Jax happen. As Jax backs off into fog of war, I make the call to stop chasing and continue going back at the mid and getting that mid lane pyro, and potentially making any picks onto the enemy team if they happen to disrespect us. Well, we managed to burn the Jinx's Gale Force, but not much else besides damaging her HP bar a little bit. That being said, we finish shoving out the wave, and again we turn towards bot lane. Jax, once again, has to back off. Here my team gets a little bit antsy, maybe wants to start a fight, but I ping them and tell them to back off. We don't want to fight here because the Jax can easily collapse on us, and that's not going to be a good fight. We need to just back off here, keep going mid, keep getting that prio, and keep pressuring the Jax. I shove another mid wave, and again, towards Jax we go. Unfortunately, he's able to kill our Trundle, but we do pick up a kill to follow that up with, and he is not able to get a turret, so in terms of the split push, he's being completely neutralized right now. Unfortunately, the problem is that so are we. We have a massive advantage in team fights, and we should be able to siege and get some objectives, but the Jax is really forcing us to divide a lot of our attention towards him, and not able to get too much done. That being said, with Jax off the table right now, we can just pick up a Drake. The enemy team gets greedy, fails to try and contest it, and ends up giving us a teamfight win. We get some kills, but there's not much else to pick up on the map in terms of objectives, so it's just some extra gold for us. 5 minutes later, we still find ourselves in the stalemate, and there's only been 2 kills for each team in this time period. But now Drake is spawning, and Jax is already at our inhibitor turret, and we're afraid that if we go for that Drake, he is going to get an inhibitor, and it won't be a good trade for us. So even though we could potentially get soul here, I made the call to just gank the Jax instead, and just give up the Drake. That ends up resulting in a free kill for us, but handing over a Drake for them, and now potentially we can just trade this into a Baron, because we traded the Drake for a numbers advantage. As you can see, we end up getting the Baron completely uncontested. Unfortunately, even with the Baron, our ability to actually use that effect is still very constricted by the fact that we have to be very worried about the fact that if Jax happens to take out Trundle on the side lane, we're all gonna have to back and deal with him. We're constantly being pulled onto the side every time we try and make any meaningful progress towards taking down their base, and this stalemate ends up dragging this game out to 55 minutes. The game definitely didn't have to end up being dragged out this long, but unfortunately we made a few mistakes that would have helped us end the game a lot sooner, and the enemy team was completely also unwilling to engage on us whatsoever and try and get mid power to enable their Jax to actually split push, because they were afraid they would lose the fight. With us making a few blunders at moments that could have been game winning, and the enemy team refusing to take any risk whatsoever, the game just ends up being dragged out for a very long time. That being said, we do end up winning after a grueling 55-minute game, when Jax had the advantage of the split push almost all game long up until the very end, and could have easily ended the game a lot sooner and winning it for his team if we hadn't been able to deal with him so effectively. Now, I am aware that this doesn't translate 100% effectively to solo queue games, since this was Clash and we had voice comms, and my team could do exactly what I told them to, and you're not going to have the same benefit in your own solo queue games. Unfortunately, this is true, but fortunately, it also goes for the enemy team. They won't be able to perfectly play around their split pusher because they don't have the proper communication. I know from first-hand experience trying to split push in solo queue that it isn't actually so simple to get your team to do an objective such as Baron while split pushing as you might think. They're going to constantly fuck up what they should be able to do with the pressure that you're providing as a split pusher. Overall, it might feel that it just comes down to a coin flip as to which team actually fucks up the hardest and ends up winning the game. But it's important that you at least understand what, in theory, you should be doing in these situations and try your best to get your team on the same page as you in order to successfully fight off against a split pusher. If you are just as much of a headless chicken as your teammates are in this situation, then you're not going to have many chances of having any agency to win that game. Depending on your ADC, there also may be more or less that you can do in order to just solo influence the split push, as opposed to needing to rely on your team the entire time. For example, if I was playing Jinx this game, I would have been much less effective at dealing with the Jax because I have much less potential to just force a fight on the Jax and kill him. However, in this particular game as Tristana, I actually had pretty good tools for dealing with the Jax because I didn't even really need my team to come with me in order to deal with the Jax's split push. In this particular situation, the Drake is about to spawn and we don't actually need our entire team to come deal with this Jax. In fact, as they show up on the bottom lane, it gives Jax a false sense of security and I can just gank him and take him down with the help of Trundle. Were I playing Jinx, this is just simply not an option because I'm too immobile, I can barely get on him, let alone escape him. But in this game, I got lucky that I just happened to pick Tristana against the split pusher, and it ends up giving us a bunch of tools to deal with him throughout the game. And in this particular scenario, it ends up leading to us getting a kill on the Jax, and then rotating to the Drake in time for that team fight. I'm not there in time for the Drake itself. Instead, I have to rely on my jungler getting a steal off in order to secure the soul for us instead of for the enemy team. But I am around for the fight itself and can help influence that towards being as close to a fight win as possible for us. Now, how do you deal with split pushing when you can't consistently get mid lane prio? Well, that's tough to answer because it really depends on the game, and a lot of times the answer will just be, you can't. If you're in a losing position on mid lane and you're in a losing position on the split push, you're probably going to lose. Losing games are more likely to be losses than wins. That's just how that is, unfortunately. You are not entirely out of options though. There are some things you can try. For example, after you finish defending away from the enemy team successfully as they're sieging your mid lane turret, for example, you can just send one person to gank the split pusher and hopefully they will be able to kill him, while the rest of your team sticks around and is able to defend the next wave pretty successfully. But what if the split pusher just isn't going to be able to be taken down by just two people? Well, then maybe you have to send your whole team after them. Maybe you just have to give up a mid lane turret in exchange for killing that one split pusher one time, and then you just try and see what you can do with that advantage gained. For example, there was that one time we killed Jax and were able to transition that into a Baron. We didn't have to give up any turrets for that, but had we had to give up turrets for that, that would have been worth it. If you're playing this from the losing side, you just have to accept you have to make a lot of sacrifices to try and get an advantage. Anyway, that's going to be all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe for more educational ADC content like this in the future. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitch if you want to see me live by any chance. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Later, gamers.